Right now, there are several No Kings protests happening around the country, including right here in the Triad. There are two happening from Greensboro. On the left is a live look at the protests outside the Guilford County Courthouse just downtown. And on the right, you're taking a live look at the protests at City Hall in Winston-Salem. That one is expected to go until 3 p.m. This map helps show just how many protests are happening in our nation. Some already over, some are happening right now, and some are yet to get underway. You can barely make out where North Carolina is with the amount of pins. Good afternoon, I'm Nixon Norman. Thanks for joining us on WFMY Plus. Millions of Americans are gathering for these protests with the main message, quote, "America has no kings and the power belongs to the people." As you saw, one of the protests is underway here in Greensboro. WFMY News 2's Lauren Tier is at the one outside of the Guilford County Courthouse downtown. Lauren, this has been going on for more than an hour. What's the crowd like out there?
That's right, Nixon. Well, if there aren't hundreds of people here, there are potentially even thousands. As you can see, they are lined up and down the sidewalk in downtown Greensboro, right outside the courthouse. All of them cheering, encouraging these cars driving by to honk their horns and wave their signs. I'm sure you can hear it. It's a very loud scene, and it's very apparent that everyone here wants their voices to be heard. Now, this is actually the second stop that we've made today. Earlier today, around 11 o'clock this afternoon, we were over on West Wendover, where there were also thousands of people stretching miles up and down West Wendover Avenue. On both sides, pretty much wherever there was a sidewalk, there were people standing with their signs, waving their American flags, and hundreds upon hundreds of cars driving past were honking their horns. And we saw people of all ages there, actually, and it's pretty much the same scene here at the Guilford County Courthouse. You know, you see older people all the way down to young kids. In fact, there are some kids playing in the yard right next to me. And it's just really interesting to see the amount of people that have showed up from all of these different demographics. Nixon?
Yeah, Lauren, I saw in the video that you had sent back, there was tons of signs, and even where you are right now. Can you just tell me what some of those signs read? What have you been seeing out there? What are people saying?
Well, of course, the main message is no kings. So you're going to see a lot of signs that say no kings, a lot of crowns with big red X's through them. And it's not just on the signs, it's on people's clothes as well. We've seen lots of shirts with that motif. But then, of course, there are plenty of signs that are just calling for democracy. Lots of signs that say honk for democracy, or democracy has its place in America, or democracy belongs with the people. Messages along those lines, and really just all of these people are trying to emphasize that they want their voices heard and they want to peacefully protest the current administration. And I will say, in the hours that we've been covering these protests, we have seen no signs of violence. Everything has been very peaceful. And in terms of law enforcement presence at either of these locations, we've seen a handful of police officers, but again, no violence of any kind. Nixon?
Thank you so much, Lauren. We will check back in with you here shortly. Now, we did speak with Greensboro police before these events. They said they're going to have officers at these to make sure people are able to protest peacefully. Now, what presence have you seen? And she just mentioned that, actually. And we will be looking at a live look outside of City Hall over in Winston-Salem right now. The department says they have had little involvement. This protest is expected to go until 3 p.m. You can see some of the same things going on out there. People with their signs, people lined up. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. That one reads right there. It seems to be hundreds of people out there. Of course, I am not out there, so I cannot know for sure, but it seems there is still a big crowd over in Winston-Salem, and again, that is expected to go on until about 3 p.m. today. Just people out there, you see the Statue of Liberty right now walking by, a pride flag with an American flag. You see characters holding up signs just like the ones here in Greensboro. and just people out there wanting their voice heard. Now, this is not the first time we've seen a No Kings protest in the Triad. This video shows the demonstrations in the Triad back in June. These happened in larger part to protest the military parade in D.C. that marked the Army's 250th anniversary. We saw protests in Greensboro, Winston-Salem, High Point, and Lexington. I actually reported on one in Winston last time around, and it was a huge crowd, with it merging with a pride event that was already going on. Now, there are 4 main protests this time around. That includes 2 in Greensboro, 1 on Wendover, and 1 at the courthouse that we saw with Lauren. In Asheboro, 1 is set to get underway at 2 p.m., and you already saw the one that looks like it's at City Hall in Winston-Salem. Now, moving on to other protests across the country, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, is in Washington, D.C. This is a live look at the gathering where you can see a speaker is on stage right now. Politicians are expected to speak later, including Senator Chris Murphy and Senator Bernie Sanders. We also know there are protests happening in places like Boston, Chicago, Phoenix, whatever city you can name, they're there. And before the protests got underway, we talked to organizers about the meaning behind these demonstrations. Here's what one had to say.
That's what's happening right now in our country. Is there is hatred, there is ego, there is greed, there is all kinds of horrible things trying to take hold. But as a Quaker, I believe that there is that of God in every single person, and that there is light that can come out of every single person, and that there is more light in the world than there is darkness. And that's what I plan on seeing, and what I have seen at event after event with Indivisible and with No Kings is all these bright shining lights showing up to just dispel the darkness and lead us out of this fascist attempt of a takeover.
While we haven't seen any comments from President Trump on these No Kings demonstrations, House Speaker Mike Johnson did briefly speak on them. Here's what he had to say.
We refer to it by its more accurate description, the Hate America rally, okay? And I'm not sure how anybody can refute that. They're opposed to law enforcement, they're opposed to military, and their votes show it over and over. That's the collection of voices that you'll hear tomorrow that the Democrats will go out and raise their hands with and cheer with. And some of these people are so blinded by their hatred of President Donald Trump that they can't find one reason to celebrate America or all that we've accomplished and continue to accomplish under this new administration.
As we told you earlier, there are protests happening across the Triad today. Again, 2 of those in Greensboro. Let's go back out to WFMY News 2's Lauren Tier outside of the Guilford County Courthouse. Lauren, I still cannot get over the size of the crowd out there, and it is loud.
Yeah, Nixon, it really is staggering, not just to see, but to hear. Like you said, it is incredibly loud out here. People chanting, people cheering, and of course, all of those car horns honking. We've actually made our way across the street from the courthouse to kind of give you a better look at the crowd.
This is the only country that I've got to defend. So I want to make sure that everyone understands I'm against most of the policies of Trump.
Now, thank you, Lauren. That was a great look at what's going on downtown. Here's another live look at the protests happening in Winston-Salem now. These are the rules to be aware of with these protests. First, it's important to note that you are not allowed to wear a mask unless it's for health or religious reasons. If you are wearing a mask for one of those reasons and police ask you to take it off to identify you, you must take it off or you could be arrested. You also have a permit to protest in certain spots, which these demonstrations do have. You also cannot protest just anywhere. It's not allowed on private property. Now, these protests nationwide are happening as President Donald Trump sends National Guard troops to different cities nationwide. It also comes as ICE enforcement takes a spotlight across the country. We already touched on the situation in Chicago as Trump tries to get troops there. A judge temporarily blocked that from happening for 14 days. We continue to cover the protests happening on Wendover Avenue in Greensboro. Let's go back to WFMY News 2's Lauren Tier just one last time during this WFMY Plus stream. Lauren, any updates on the crowd out there? I think we lost you earlier because, again, it's just so loud. There are so many people.
Yeah, I apologize for that. It is clearly very crowded out here. There are not just a lot of people to look at. There are a lot of things to hear. We've got chanting going on. We've got cheering and, of course, those car horns. Again, this crowd just continues to seemingly grow. As we've been here, we see people walking up the sidewalk with more signs coming to join this peaceful protest. Like I said earlier, we have seen no signs of violence or anything of that nature. Everything has been very peaceful up to this point, and I've spoken with different people in different crowds, including the crowd on West Wendover, and all of them have said the same thing. They have not experienced any acts of violence since being out here or even seen any counter-protesters. As far as the presence of law enforcement, we really haven't seen too many police officers out here, only about a handful of police cars parked and officers kind of patrolling the situation. But again, it has all been peaceful up to this point. People just holding their signs, waving to cars, asking them to honk their horns and have their voices heard. Nixon?
Yeah, Lauren, are there any signs of things dying down? As you had said, there's hundreds, definitely, possibly thousands of people out there. Are things slowing down? I hear cars still honking by, but are people starting to disperse, or is this still just heavily going on?
I mean, as far as I've seen and as long as I've been out here, I see no signs of this crowd dwindling down anytime soon. Like I said, we're still seeing people coming to join the protest, parking their cars and walking over with their signs. I was told by one woman that they plan to kind of wrap up things around 2 p.m., but as of right now, it doesn't look like this crowd is going to die down anytime soon. Of course, I'm sure it'll take quite a few minutes to get all of these people out and on their way this lovely Saturday afternoon. But I just want to reiterate that so far since we've been out here, and again also at that location in West Wendover, everything has been entirely peaceful. We have seen no signs of violence. Live in downtown Greensboro, Lauren Tier, WFMY News 2.
Thank you so much for your reporting, Lauren. And before we wrap up the show, here's another live look at the protests happening in Winston-Salem. As you heard earlier, this one is expected to continue to go until 3 p.m. And for all the protests happening, this is one happening over there in City Hall. You see people walking by, no kings, yes, love thy neighbor. I'm just going to read some of the things that are going on and just tell you what I see. Save democracy, save science. Again, people just wanting to put their opinions out there. People are videoing, I'm sure, for their social media. They're keeping an eye on all of this. Again, just getting the message further and further out there for people who are not at these protests. You see people walking by with hats of American flags. Again, something that Lauren had mentioned is you see people of all ages. You see people from child to older adults. You see people in, one person that she had interviewed earlier was in a wheelchair. There is just a lot of folks out there from every walk of life, really, again, just wanting to say what's on their mind when it comes to how they feel about the country and the current administration. And again, it's happening all over the Triad. 2 places here in Greensboro, and again, what we're looking at right now is over in Winston-Salem near City Hall. It seems like more and more people are showing up. Again, expected to end at 3 p.m., but there is just a lot going on. Now, for all the protests happening in the Triad, we have only heard reports of these being peaceful. We will continue to track all of them throughout the day. And we will continue to cover these protests later this evening on WFMY News 2 at 6. You can watch right here on WFMY Plus. That'll be followed by WFMY News 2 at 11. And of course, thank you for joining us. We'll see you later tonight.